Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're continuing reading on the Precious Garland writing of Nagarjuna, very famous, to his friend King Gautamiputra. It's a 5-chapter long writing, and we are going through the 4th chapter called Royal Policy. Nagarjuna is giving advice to his king friend how to run affairs of his kingdom from his own role as a king down to how to deal with the prisoners and so on. So we'll continue where we left last week, talking about how to appoint ministers. Appoint ministers who know good policy, who practice the doctrine, are civil, pure, harmonious, undaunted, of good lineage, of excellent ethics, and grateful. Of course, anybody who has these qualities would be appointed for the very job they apply. When you seek an appointment for any position, they usually look for these qualities. It's not just appointing ministers. Any position that you know, whoever is familiar with the policy and also good practice of the policy, who adheres to the policy, who is very civil, meaning who's not aggressive and violent, who's sincere and who works to create harmony and not put principle before people, but try to make harmony between people. Because if people put principle before people, then they create disharmony. And they're stuck with the principle that nobody can relate to. Often it's like that, isn't it? So principles are try to work how to work with people. If the principles loses people and one becomes so snobbish to righteously ignore and reject people and cut people, then you are stuck with the just dry principle. So that's why harmonious. It's very important. Harmonious, undaunted. Yeah, whatever time may take to do the good. One has to learn that good will persist, and difficulties will appear and they will disappear. But your goodness shouldn't be daunted. And people get daunted very easily. Very quickly they get swayed like a little piece of flag, as they got no stand of their own. He says, of good lineage, he said that if you adhere an example of the enlightened ones, the Buddhas, or the Bodhisattvas, the practitioners, how did they live? What do they say? One should learn to remember their way of dealing things, and therefore be civil, and be grateful. People forget the good, then they react to throw away everything in their childish reaction. And then they get alienated by their own ungratefulness. Be grateful. A minister who's grateful, who will be grateful for appointing you, who will be faithful, who will carry out the duties for the benefit of the people, and not full of his own position, but who actually delivers. In some regards, this is same in people in organization when they appoint each other. When we appoint each other, someone nominate you, and you accept the position, and they say thank you. There's a lot of respect. They're trusting each other. You do a good job. Please do it again. Thank you. This sort of thing. In the old days, it was appointed by the one above. So in these days, it's all appointed by a democracy. It's completely changed. That was 2nd century. 2nd century was appointing from the above, ministers or everybody else. Nowadays, basically, most are appointed democratically, and then anybody who seeks position have to fulfill the criteria and then get contested. Usually there's a more than applicant than the job offers, and they usually will shortlist not only on paper. Even if you get selected on paper, within 3 to 4 months, they will. That's a provisional, They will not totally trust the papers. They'll see how consistent the person will perform. That's exactly these qualities they're looking for. Appoint generals who are generous. Now talking about appointing generals. Appoint generals who are generous, with attachment, brave, kindly, who use the treasury properly, are steadfast, always conscientious, and practice the doctrine. So it's talking about the king, Nagarjuna, assumes all the subjects are followers of the doctrine. I don't know what doctrine he refers to, but say if they're all Buddhists, that they should not use their power or force or the positions to where they like, and they should be practicing them according to the doctrine, according to the guidelines, according to the policies. I suppose they may be very brave. They have to be very kindly. There's even in the military, there's a lot of rules. If somebody drops their weapons, put their hands up, you're not allowed to shoot them. It's pretty good, really. So you know how to save your life, don't you? And it's a military crime if you do a few things like that. So even in the military, they have these rules. Means, of course, in this case, not so much military, but in our case, if we think we have a power or something to exercise, we shouldn't just unleash our power, but make sure there's a kind and careful, whether that's a bit overstepping or just moderate. Have to be very careful, It's all about mindfulness, and Nagarjuna is talking. Then he's talking about other office bearers. As administrators, appoint elders, meaning that people who hold a little bit senior experience and knowledge and good should appoint those people of religious predisposition and able. So you should first not just fill the position just because there's somebody, but try to fill by someone who has a little bit of experience, knowledge, and I would say all-time experience and understanding of what the job or position requires. Who know what should be done, are skilled in the royal treatises. That means not too really harsh treatments. Understand good policy, are unbiased, and are kindly. So very much fitting, same as with the generals and ministers. No matter how much powerful and experience they have, they should be really kindly, and they shouldn't be biased towards particular people, biased against some other people. They should be doing it really. Unbiasedly or without particular attachment towards some and aversion another, and go on the merit of the individuals. And of course, these days, in the modern situation, there's a lot of that, a lot of emphasis on that. It's like unethical to appoint your brother or to like that, isn't it? It's a bias, but should be given equal opportunity. Every month, you should hear from them about all the incomes and expenses. We do that. And having heard, you yourself should tell them all what should be done for the centers of the doctrine and so forth. So it's making the king to be dutiful, to be responsible, not just giving occasional orders, but you should be really mindful to attend the meetings and listen to these things carefully, take the role seriously, and what are the things that are being spent on? Are they necessary? How are the income generated? Are they warranted? And then should therefore be active participant, not just a obligatory one. This is talking to the king, you know. Of course, those people who have hold those roles, of course, will come. They'll report, they'll complain, they'll say what this isn't going well or what isn't going good, and so don't just think it's their duty. Just give the support if they need one. Try to understand what they're going through. What can we do together? And all should be done. All that should be done. Just leave it to them. They say, "Oh, you should have done it. That was your responsibility." But have a briefing, have a feedback, and don't expect everybody. Oh, he will do. He may be struggling. Often people are struggling, not because they're not up to it, but they have no time. They got many other things. They are like that. But at the same time, particularly being able to oversee the whole thing, and try to attend to them a little bit more heartily, wholeheartedly. It's every month, he says. And then, of course, there's biannually, and then there's also, in Australian government, and there's every BAS statement, they call it, every 3 months or something, quarterly, and then of course, annually, It's very important because talking about how to execute the public affairs, public funds, public purposes, and so on. If your realm exists for the doctrine and not for the fame and desire, so this is Nagarjuna is highlighting the king that you should do it completely to support the doctrine. If you're doing for your own fame and reputation and a status or the recognition or that sort of thing, and then it will be extremely fruitful. If you're not distracted by fame and desire, but you do it really for the goodness of majority and for the doctrine, means for the teaching. If teaching get really employed properly, then it will benefit people. It will be extremely fruitful. If not, its fruit will be misfortune. Yeah, if it's hijacked by ordinary intention and desire, fame and worldly dharma, that's what we're really talking about. It may look good on the outside, but it will bring misfortune. It will not benefit. So of course, this misfortune, what he's talking about, is not necessarily straight away. And people may not even think they will ever have to experience it because they don't follow the law of causality. That the consequences will come later, and also this means that even our present difficulties or misfortunes are not result of things we did just recent months or recent years. These are misfortunes for results of long way back. Maybe not even this life. It's a bit hard. Probably not this life. Some people enjoying wonderful things in this life, but there's a result of some things they did in the way back, maybe previous incarnation. This life they have been relatively good, but they aren't quite reaping some good results. And that's because the queue of the good deeds or queue of the bad deeds from the past lives takes precedent over the things we're doing these days. So therefore, some are ripening. Most things are ripening because the force of the past is so strong. Karma is not allowed to queue jump. You have to wait your queue. And in the West, that I really learned a lot. looking at how strictly people observe the queue, whether it's a movie ticket or whether whether boarding the airplane or whatever. It's quite an orderly fashion. If you can tell, these people really, it's very important, these things. Basically, they're all practicing karma. They're practicing karma. He's been there before, so let him go ahead. You know? People instinctively believe in the law of cause and effect. They don't know it's karma. They don't know it's you know, if you arrive early, you go early. You arrive late, you got to wait. That's cause and effect, you know. And not just physically, karmically too. You know, if you're thinking a lot of good thoughts, you know, you'll have a lot of joy, a lot of just in no time, very quickly. Even difficulties will be very short-lived. If you develop a lot of positive thoughts, now the force of it, because some of just time-wise, some-wise because we just long time, the karma is powerful. Other times, the nature and intention is very strong. It can just destroy some negativity in no time. So the force of the intention, some by power of association. If you do something like this together regularly, the merit of listening and having a sangha is so good, you know, so good to stick with it and good to be the old timer. And those who are new, they don't know how to begin, you know, and being able to create, you know. It says, your realm exists for the doctrine. That's like our society. Our objectives exist for the sake of the teachings of the Buddha. There's no other really purposes. Preserving Tibetan culture or language, of course, they're just part and parcel of it, and it's not so necessary. Just because happen to be coming through the conduit of Tibetan people, and we say that. But it was in a Polish language. We say the Polish, you know, Polish language, Polish culture, in which the services will be conducted, and so on. So we mustn't be for sidetracked by the main purpose. Is the doctrine of kindness and non-violence, and peace, and compassion, and so on. That's the most important one. And not for any other reason, then benefit will be fruitful. You wouldn't believe it. Sometimes, how did this all come about? You know, some people put a lot of effort. They don't really eventuate a good result. They just completely lost, and there's no trace of it. I've seen that. Quite a few places, few establishments, they just have no trace left these days. Some, of course, do it to amalgamate the effort. You know, like one Buddhist organization, they used to have put two places, one down in Tilba, now one in Queensland. They then couldn't quite manage both, because the teacher is very old. He comes only once a year. And even that is a bit difficult. So they can't manage both. So they closed down, sold one and moved on. That's not the case we're talking about. And that is okay. That's quite reasonable. Sometimes you have to do it, amalgamate effort all into one rather than trying to. But others have completely have no sign of it. It's start with a big sort of fanfare for a little while and doesn't continue, because it's all about identity and individual status worship. If it's for the sake of doctrine, then the activities and the legacy will continue. And because this writing by Nagarjuna even addressed to an individual king, but he says it is for the sake of the doctrine, not for your fame, not for your personal gains. If you do that, then it says benefit will be not very limited. It will be bringing you misfortune. Exactly. So these are very important ones, particularly activities that requires everybody's effort together, working continuously with a combined effort and energy, and people put a lot of selfless kindness into it. We must, and that's why, because we are somewhat bonded by the doctrine of the teachings of the Buddha, what you call Buddha Shasanam. Buddha Shasanam, and that's which actually means the doctrine of the Buddha. Buddha Shasanam. Shasanam really means the teaching or the doctrine that teaches people, points people what to do that is good, or what to drop that is not good, and how to purify their mind. That is the teaching of the Buddha. You know? So even though Nagarjuna is talking to a king, he's always going around his royal policy, but he's talking about doctrine. O Lord of humans, since in this world nowadays most are prone to wreak havoc on each other, listen to how your governance and your practice should be. So he's giving the instruction to the king that how in this degenerate time people are basically influenced negatively by each other, and so unless you have a good governance, they are basically unprotected, unguarded, and unguided. So therefore, listen to how you listen to your own heart, how you govern the land according to the doctrine. If you do that, it will bring all those people who are otherwise directionless, will find a way and create a good transition into their lives. And quite a lot of those kings actually heed to these kind of instructions. And we were reading last week. We were talking about. He says you shall establish centers of the doctrine. Establish centers of the doctrine like temples and establishment of Sangha and study and practice and meditation teaching. And nowadays, when we even 2,000 years after, I don't know when those kings built, so some of them are like 3rd century BC, like Ajanta, a lot of those caves. Those kings actually heeded to the Nagarjuna, actually gave their whole resources to repay the kindness of their parents for the doctrine, Even though they did in the memory of their parents, what they did was for the doctrine. They carved mountains and create temples. And it will last very, very long. Xuanzang, Chinese pilgrim who went in 7th century to India, he saw a thriving community practicing Dharma. That's like 500-600 years. No more than that. That was at least like 1,000 years since the monastery was built, So when people put the effort to build establishments of Dharma for the future, and then it has that much longevity to benefit. So Nagarjuna's writings has been heeded too by likes of King Gautamiputra. This was, of course, circulated to many more than the particular king, and they actually have heeded too, and even when this was translated into Tibet, that's what the kings did. Tibetan kings, royal patronage. Buddhism received royal patronage, persuaded by writings like this. The whole resources of the king and the government, everything they collected, was spent to propagate the Dharma. When Indian abbot Shikanakavarma and Tibetan Lotsawa Patsam Nyimatra, after this is very early. This is 8th century translation, from Sanskrit into Tibetan, and then subsequent Tibetan kings and rulers all did the same. They actually weren't just looking at this; they read this and they actually did put the effort. There may be a little skirmish between tribes and so on, but whoever did play the role of the leader, they actually put all of their energy to sponsor the building of the huge monasteries in Tibet. Now, even communists couldn't arrest them. they destroy all the walls and the roofs, but the foundations were deep down. They couldn't remove, so they just rebuilt it in the mid-80s onwards. Now, most of the 6,000 monasteries are rebuilt. Some completely non-existent monasteries, they didn't even have the base, was built in Larungar. Larungar is a place that didn't even have a stone there before the communists came as a place of center. the great masters like Lama Choedak, he's like a Dharma king, really, in his own time, you know. He's really, really more king than any king would suggest. An old monk who walks bare feet and limps, you know. He never looks after his body. Completely, really, really yogi. If you see, there are a few snapshots of him these days. It's amazing. He was just, and he just preaches out of nowhere in the middle of the country in Sichuan, on the mountains, is this thriving monastic community, much larger than anything we had all those last 1,300 years. And it is not irascible. They are demolishing some. They are putting sort of restrictions and so on. And this is in some ways looks repressive, and in other ways they're just a bit afraid. This is getting too big. Too big a center. It was huge. Danny tried to go there. He didn't get there because too many people. They're just chock-a-block. You couldn't even get there. That, if you look at the photos, unbelievable. It's just like some little Sukhavati. Looks like the main building looks like a real mandala, real three-dimensional mandala, like this. They actually heed to these texts very seriously, put all of their resources to and built, and with hand, and with, of course, not only give money, but actually lend a real hand, and put aside all other things. Make a big makeshift kitchen. Thousands of people, some serving, some volunteer cooking, you know, and others working. And that's how they built, you know. For the sake of the doctrine, you know. Not for any other purposes. Any other purpose will bring no benefit. This will benefit. So, let there always be around you many persons, all in experience, of good lineage. So it's the meaning that try to, if possible, maintain good, long-standing relationship with people who belong to the teachings, who know the teachings, who are bonded with the teachings, knowing good policy of the Dharma, knowing, always remember the good policy of Dharma, not just sidetracked by anything else, who shrink from ill deeds, who actually do not get swayed by some people or others to dissipate their energy, and not shrinking their effort or effectiveness, you know, but actually increasing the effectiveness, as you can almost count few because they've been there so long, they have the lineage, they have the experience, they know the history, are agreeable to you, agreeable with the things that you all do together, and know what should be done. They focus, not having warring ideas, one want to do this, another. Even if there is some like that, try to come to a consensus, what is best for the majority. And it's very, very important to work in the community and being able to listen and then not get pushing one's own ideas first and then listen to others and then try to make friends and try to come to the main good point, not get sidetracked by small things. Sometimes people, so small things, they get really upset and they think they don't want to have anything to do with it. It's so childish, as if they never heard Dharma. Just completely forget Dharma, and it's amazing. You know, they thought we had refuge. It's so easy to have little different points of view, even with oneself. After a few years, we realize, gosh, you're terrible. At that time, we didn't disagree. We were deluded. And then now we deluded. Of course, when we're working with people, they spot our delusion. Which we will have to spot in a few years' time. So it's good. If you think like that, it's really Sangha, It's not so that they are trying to pick on each other, isn't it? They try to work, how can we get the main thing done by dropping personal differences, And then there's not even personal differences, personal misunderstandings. Because there's a misunderstanding only. So, agreeable. Know what should be done, Not sidetracked by what they don't want to do. See, they're not cooperating. They should cooperate, but they're not cooperating, so they don't know they should cooperating. So they forgot that to be done. Even to those whom they have rightfully fined, bound, punished, and so forth. So this is people who the king's law has rules to punish people, fine people, bound and maybe restricted, and for whatever wrongdoings they committed. Even if there were such times that you had to do that out of goodwill for the benefit of the society and at large, not just particularly for that person, they just happen to be the example. You, being moistened with compassion, should always be caring. Even if there are some who are bound and fined, restricted and punished and so forth, for whatever agreeable code of ethics or things that it is, but overall, that too should be done out of compassion, moistened with compassion, and one mustn't do it simply to inflict pain or guilt or try to extract a confession from them. Should always be caring, It's not important to highlight their mistakes. It's bad enough for them to remember. When one person is hard enough, it doesn't need to be burdened with everybody else. So be forgiving. Forgiving, and it basically saying, maybe you should reduce the length of the punishment or nature of the punishment, and give some clemency or compassion. That's what he's really hinting. He says, "O king, through compassion you should always generate just an attitude of altruism, even for all those embodied beings who have committed awful ill deeds." See, now it's coming very, So, although your royal duty may require you to put some fines or restrictions or some kind of punishment of some sort, you should do it only with compassion for the benefit of many. But deep and down, you should still be caring for the individual persons. And if you have to do this out of compassion, even if they did very bad deeds, your punishment should not be only legally right, but should be altruistically done so just for the sake of their own benefit. Some punishment really corrects people. Other punishment does never correct people. Why? Those people who does with a good heart, it benefits them. Even some kind of a little punishment actually harms them, helps them. Bitter pill, they call it. Bitter pill, cures, because your intention is not really hurt them at all. Your intention is help them, Even those who have done terrible things. To give up on any sentient being is already a transgression of Bodhisattva, the vow, first number vow, not to forget bodhicitta. How can one afford to exclude, or pick on anyone like that when you really think about your bodhicitta? And of course here, the king, Nagarjuna, is speaking completely from the point of view of the Mahayana point of view, being compassionate. Being compassionate to not just to some, but especially to the wicked, he says. Especially to the wicked. Compassionate to the nice person who's nice to us, our mother or somebody is we turn around, unless mother is very wicked. If we think our mother was wicked, even she should be treated with compassion. People who are wicked in this life, to us, are not there by their choice. It's by the mutual karma of us and them and many others bring about these things. So therefore, the compassionate responses we give will actually mutually purify the karma that is partially ours as well. And you will notice sometimes when you see somebody so wicked, but it's only wicked to a few, not to everyone. To some, he's very nice. So what's that? So he's not incapable of being nice. He's basically capable of very nice, but he just don't want to practice with you. so that says a lot not about him. It says a lot about us, for whatever it is. When you think like that, the ball is on our court, because otherwise we think he's not generous, he's aggressive to all, like that. Not like that. So that shows unique causes condition that we ourselves has partially contributed consciously in the past to warrant as such. So if we practice compassion with those who are wicked ones, it probably is a very, very purificatory. Especially general compassion for those whose ill deeds are horrible, the murderers. Those of fallen nature are receptacles of compassion from those whose nature is magnanimous. So this is very much a sort of, in the Mahayana teaching generally says you practice loving kindness, compassion in gradation. First with the easiest person, someone who's very kind to you. Even towards them, we haven't really developed that kindness. Even though they've been wonderfully kind, we just don't even know how kind they were or have been, And so we try to create a near and dear to them, and then try to extend that to some other people, like friends and so on. And so when you have practiced easiest people and then not so easy people, or some then even neutral people, total strangers, you're not practicing compassion just because you know him. It's not because they did this to me, or just because we are from the same country. Most people's compassion is biased compassion. Wait until your compassion matures to practice with a neutral person. It's completely random, what they call random kindness. They never say specific kindness, even in a vernacular sayings. They don't say relative kindness. They say random kindness, meaning wherever it's warranted. So that's almost, you must have matured a little bit to be able to practice random kindness without only taking sides or bias. Now, compassion practices horrible people who have done terrible things. Everybody will stone the person. That's what it's referring to. Even murderers. One must develop compassion. That is when you have developed your heart from enmity and ill will towards the murderer. Will not achieve nothing. That's the whole thing. If it's achieved, good, and it will transform the person very good, or whatever. Well, if we can stop all the murderous people in the future, maybe we can just stay angry for a couple of years, because the longer we keep angry, that much it reduces the murderers in the society. Then it's worth it, but it's not. It's probably producing another one inside us. It's probably murdering ourselves in the process. It is actually, because murderers only murders us, don't send us into hell, Shantideva says. But this anger will take me to hell. So you wouldn't believe some people are killing because someone killed them, their people. And what did they do? Achieve? Just become the very person they were angry at. So they become two, and then the third one joins four, and so on. So what's the benefit? So we're not talking about just being compassion being a very nature of us, but very unnatural. very unnatural to have such compassion to someone who's done a horrible thing. Most people think that that person should be buried alive or and let elephants stomp on the soil so that, that he never gets up. Society thinks like that they should be buried alive, they should be stoned alive, they should be hanged, and they should be... Society do all sorts of things like that. But they don't. They have no idea of the law of cause and effect. So that's why here Nagarjuna is a second Buddha, he's not saying this lightly. And those who have committed awfully ill deeds. So that text makes us to leap our compassion from not the near and dear and random, but to people and places and situations who are awful. And then, how do you do that? That's the question. Put ourselves in their shoes. What must be like him doing this to ourselves? Then you start to see what must be their day like. How they must be awful to be in that body, and must be awful to be the father of whoever or brother of whoever. He too has all this, his own community, and it must be so awful. Does anybody understand him? Give him moral support. What's like? Does anybody empathize what's like to be there and doing that with such a overpowering hatred? Once upon a time, he probably was like me, And then it got unrestrained and then gone out of control. Maybe the person was really good, very peaceful, very generous, very this. That's what these days says. They didn't realize the person next door who did terrible things was such a nice person. He was peaceful. He's neighborly. People say that. They don't realize what has culminated the person to reach that out of not by choice, by sheer force of the volume of karma, and they call many unfortunate circumstances. Yeah, if you look at those people who do terrible things, they got a history of so many hardships, and they just didn't know how to cope with the difficulties. They didn't receive any useful help in time to correct them, to tame them, to help them really, and as a result, they felt that's completely misunderstood, and they just hate their existence. They couldn't show anybody who can understand and give a real valid help. And then they turn against everyone and eventually on themselves. It's just hell. And that is like it's just trying to be ourselves in their shoes, and then. We won't be siding the whole, masses and crowd opinion. The crowd mob violence. They call it mob violence. Mob opinions are dangerous because they have no clarified thought. They just mob violence, mob gossip, mob aggression. Carried away by mob gossip and mob kind of ideas, and themselves have not subtracted the wrong in it. They just think there's everybody seeing this, there must be some truth, but the majority don't. That's the whole thing. There's hardly anyone whose head is straight in there. When they are sort of influenced by the mob violence or mob demonstration. They never went into the demonstration thinking they will throw a stone. But all of a sudden, they're throwing stones. They don't know who to, but they just over there. They have no idea. Physically, you can see more violence. And verbally also, they're saying things, they get no validation. They're just completely out of control. So people are usually instigated by very bad surroundings, individuals, and then they committed that murder, poor thing. And he would not feel proud. And who can practice compassion now? Usually it's their mother will. If the mother knows her son has committed such a deed, she will be among the few who will still try to visit him, bring some home-cooked food, and still try to comfort him. She's not saying what he's done is right, but she still loves him, and his sorrow is hers. That's, the mothers practice this. Loved ones practice this to the murderer, isn't it? And now how many, all the relatives also, whatever it is, they will, see? When our brother is a murderer, then you will see. Then you will see how important compassion is to a murderer, or whatever. But otherwise, we think it's someone the society shouldn't have. That this world should be perfect. Without him, we'll be perfect type of thing. Therefore, he should be hanged. That kind of attitude. In those days, of course, Nagarjuna, of course, very, very enlightened mind, of course. But both treatment during those days to prisoners and criminals who have created terrible crimes, a very heavy, heavy, heavy punishment, unbelievable, Even in Tibet, in the 11th, 12th century, not everybody were literate anyway, so Tibetan got very little fault. They can't even read some of these texts because majority of them are illiterate, If they have time to attend teachings, they would have heard it, but they didn't, and they have terrible policies against prisoners, as even in the last 17th century, they were gouging eyes or chaining people for life or things like that, and putting like rock salt in the palm. And then they put a kind of leather that they can never open the fist. They just completely go. And then a couple of years later, they're completely what do you call? The fingers are stuck and become amputee. Yeah, they're like the fingers can't open. They go paralyzed. They can never use hand. That kind of treatment. Awful, isn't it? Very, very barbarous, really. And instead of correcting people, and also they used to put some cross on the forehead. People who've killed, they used to burn. Put a mark here, cross, saying this person has killed somebody. They make a big burnt mark, a cross one. They're saying he killed somebody. So wherever he goes, the rest of his life, everybody knows. This wasn't Buddhist. There are no Buddhist laws, very severe. So all the old medieval countries used to have terrible systems. See, Nagarjuna, through the influence of Buddha Dharma, thought was so influenced in that early days. How not to be too harsh on those people who may have committed very, very terrible deeds, Individuals. This is what is referring to. That to us is how we as individuals, we might think someone has done this wrong, or wrecked our life, or did this to us, or whatever. We too shouldn't be thinking. They are your sort of enemy. You'd never forgive them. They're wrong. That sort of thing. One shouldn't think like that. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot of those things are our own doing as well. Everything is interdependent. There are a lot of causes and conditions. So therefore, instead of being so righteous about the wrong of other people, one should soften our heart and not breed those ill wills towards others. Free the weak prisoners after a day or 5 days. Do not think others are not to be freed under any conditions. Now slowly, and Nagarjuna saying that those prisoners who are looking very weak and malnourished and underfed, don't let them to suffer like that. They're already looking very weak. Just let them have a little relaxed day for one day, or 5 days. He says, let them have 5 days free and then bring them back again. So otherwise, you're really, really harsh on them, Do not think that some people who've done terrible, they should never be freed because they have done terrible things. You should not think like that. Under any condition, they shouldn't be freed. One should not think like that. You should have always room for compassion and room for careful way or clemency or something that you can suffer. You can see even that much suffering is not warranted. Try to sort of release a little bit. Maybe the chain should be loosened, or maybe they should be allowed to wander in the backyard, or or whatever. I think well-behaved prisoners do get early release, I'm told, isn't it? So they're actually heeding to this, yeah? They do that in Australia. I heard somebody's convicted, and then he will be released in 5 days or 5 years. We thought he should be spending the rest of his life, but no, he'll be released in 5 years. And some people are not happy because he's going to be released so soon. But if you go to the prison, he's not suffering at all. He has got 5-star arrangement, He's got his own room. At home, probably he didn't have the privilege to have his own room. All his bills paid for. See? Completely the opposite, upside down nowadays. And the prisoners are not having the freedom to move about, do your own thing might be a thing. Otherwise, very, very comfortable. So, if Nagarjuna was around these days, I think it would be quite a different letter, I think. Those days, he was aware. There was condition in the prison, just awful. Like some of the prisons in third world countries, still like that, Still like that. Good thing about those prisons in the third world countries, and sometimes they arrest hundreds of them, hundreds of them. But next day they release everybody because they haven't got any space to put them. They can't feed all these people, so let them go. Their crime, whether big or not, just let them go. Australian government's annual budget for prison, the correction facility is quite big. You can see why. It's very, very expensive. To lock up people is more expensive than, but yet they're locking them up. They call correctional facilities. They don't call prisons. There's a lot of education there, if you want to. Some good ones. Visiting the prison as a Buddhist is a bit difficult because all the chaplaincy is controlled by whoever, and not everybody is willing to invite Buddhists. Which most Buddhists are very weird, anyways. Not speaking the language, and as a monk or something, people think we are too opposite from the prison visiting. So the Christian chaplaincy have much more sort of control and connection, and they do. But some invite people like us, what they call as part of the education, not as a chaplaincy. They don't hardly any Buddhists get into as a chaplaincy, but as a education for the prisoners. From the Department of Education within the prison system, they try to teach the people to some things. Yeah, because they have got a lot of time. They really can really think through these things very easily, because they really can correct their mind if they have the right doctrine or teachings. For each one whom you do not think to free, you will lose the layperson's vow, he says. So he warns the king that if you really have a kind of vindictiveness to certain prisoners because of the heaviness of their crime, and you don't want to free them, he says you are transgressing your pratimoksha vow, not to harm any sentient being. You're doing this with intent. Due to having lost the vow, faults will constantly be amassed. So he's warning the king. So you think you may be powerful to not let somebody be free, but that's not your power. That's your affliction, really making you have no power to give compassion. And so because of your anger, you vindictively put the person long in prison, and as a result of that will make yourself to create a huge body of negative karma, because that is due to your personal anger to a particular prisoner, not because of the law. If it's according to the law, I'm sure there's all sorts of ways that you can let someone go, because it's all about caring others, correcting others, helping others, not punishing others to suffer. Purpose is not to suffer. Even the punishment were designed so that people actually change their behaviors and drop their habits and become corrected. If your intention is not correct him or her, but so that they stay there, that's it. There's no purpose other than not let him out of anger and vindictiveness. He says, you as a king are losing your own vow as a layperson and creating lots of negative karma. As long as prisoners are not freed, they should be made comfortable. So he's saying even the prisoners are not freed and they have to do their time, you shouldn't let them suffer. So therefore be comfortable with barbers, baths, food, drink, medicine, clothing. People come and shave your hair, cut your nails. Very good. You should provide all these barbers and people who will bring clothes and medicine and food. You don't even have to pay a cent. Sounds very good. No wonder how many people who can't afford Australian life go to prison. Certain people are all there. Is it because they couldn't afford to live the rest of Australians? They're doing that, or what? It's interesting because all these things are provided. At least they are not dangerous to society, but they are not. They're still not treated as non-human. They still are treated with respect as a human being, so which is good. In many ways, probably that's the purpose. So they are not let free in the community because they are a little bit unsafe and dangerous to others. So Nagarjuna is saying, even if they are not freed, do not let them go hungry or thirsty or cold or unwashed or untreated. He said, if you did this, then this is not good. Just as deficient children are punished, he's talking about children, parent giving some punishment. It assumes that they do that even last 10, 15 years ago, the corporal punishment in quite a lot of schools is quite common. Indian schools are really good, mainly because they do these things, not of heavy ones, but, really. Dehradun is the capital of boarding schools. And some of the great leaders, many prime ministers came out of there because the schools have very strict rules. I don't think they have corporal punishment as these days. But in the old days, they may hit cans on your hands or something like that. Not very, very hard, 5 or something. Ouch! It really teaches, I think. Deficient children are punished out of a wish to make them competent. So parents, so punishment should be carried out with compassion. They call fierce compassion. Parents may do a little smack or a little blackmail or a little sort of threat, and all parents do, if the children are a little out of control. Not through hatred or desire for wealth, If parents are punishing or being really strong with children with anger and hatred, then they will suffer the consequences themselves. They're not compassion, not caring. If they're deep in their heart, they really mean for the children, and otherwise they know the children aren't growing or learning or heeding, and of course then parents, they know their own heart, and who's there to judge? But in this society, it's not like that. Neighbors will call the police. Neighbor will call the police if the parents are treating the children a little bit rough, isn't it? They don't think it's between the parent and the children anymore. We have come a long way, I suppose. Society is the violence is really, really not tolerated, not accepted by society, the more civilized we become. See, Buddha was well ahead of time. Non-violence, full stop. And 2,600 years before Christ was born, he already said non-violence. If everybody is not violent towards each other, then it's already compassion. Punishment should be carried out with compassion. If at all necessary, punishment, is saying, not through anything. Not through vindictiveness and hatred and think that to prove that we are more powerful than they are. Often that can be the case, You know exactly what you can do to them, type of feeling, as they have no chance to getting up because you're more dominant. And therefore you will get away what you do. If that's the intent, it's anger, it's hatred. Heart should be crying. Outward treatment may be looked at. Heart should be crying for the child. If not, it would definitely be out of hatred. So just like children, deficient children are treated that way, so as you as the king, who is the parent of the nation and subject children who are delinquent or who are deficient, you call it. I'll call it delinquent. Subjects who are delinquent. You should also treat them so that they change, they improve. Once you have analyzed thoroughly, recognize the angry murderers. So it's talking about the mindset of the murderers and violent people have been banished without killing or tormenting them. So, so even though the murder has been banished and they are locked away or they're not allowed to be in the places where they can be a danger to society and so on. But still do not torment them. Still do not kill them. So it's completely against capital punishment. It's completely against torture, even for people who have committed terrible things. Because you can't better a person by tormenting them. But any kind of small punishment, he says, small punishment out of compassion is okay. But torture and killing the very prisoners are not. If you really analyze and recognize the state of mind who murdered, what kind of state of mind, he's already in the inferno, internally he's killed. He's already unconscious. You don't need to kill an unconscious person. You should try to resuscitate the unconscious person. So that's why they call. But prison is where people try to regain their consciousness, try to pick the pieces together where they're so much shattered by the past wrongdoings. If the society or the government is helping the person, which they are designed to, it's really, you can see the very overall intention of how the prisoners are kept and what good intent is there. But later on, those people who work there or those people who are in charge probably don't know the policies. They don't realize what is the government's intention. They think they should be punished, they should suffer the consequences of what they did to others. That kind of attitude if people have, then of course they don't realize the karma of ill will. Karma of ill will is really, really heavy. We're not saying they didn't do something untoward, but ill will towards them and resenting them and then trying to make them suffer at all costs, as long as you want them to suffer. People do that. No, we're not talking about physical violence. There's just some people just don't talk to you. They just decide not to talk to you, as if you've done terrible thing by their way, and you have to suffer their abandonment of you, so to speak. In many ways, people doing that to each other. It's awful, They don't realize how unproductive it is to themselves, and it's not helpful to the other, of course, and how themselves become prisoned in the anger. The prison of anger is the worst anger than being able to put someone in the bar, behind the bar, One self is not deciding to make friends with them. And that's terrible. That is the not punishable because you haven't broken the law, because intention cannot be detected by the law just yet. What do you think? They already have the law. They already have a lie detector. Maybe there will be a thought detector one day, intention detector. They're all talking about the guy, the South African blade runner, when he is alleged to have killed his girlfriend or whatever. They're all talking of his intent, and they're trying to find out what was his intention. He only knows. He should know that intention. How about anybody? You see, they're really trying very hard to know the intent. There's no question, no doubt about he killed her. There is not the doubt. That now the heaviness or lightness or the punishment will depend on what was the intent. See, his law is catching up, isn't it? According to Dharma, it's really catching up. It realizes how important your intent is. And that intent, according to Bodhisattva, teaching is only guardable and recognizable by the person himself or herself. And Bodhisattva vow is to guard our intent of altruism, and vow not to hold hatred about anything. Because if you do, you break your bodhicitta vows. Simple as that. It doesn't achieve correcting the other person if we are angry, if we harbor ill will. So therefore, it's unproductive. It's very pragmatic, isn't it? It's not just being right or wrong. It's just question is, what do you achieve? You don't influence the person to be better. You don't make the society safer. You don't make yourself free of misery. Actually, it's exactly the opposite. You become more miserable. The person is actually even more miserable if he's also like that, feeling that rejected, abandoned, things like that. So what did we achieve? No, resentment is very, very heavy karma. They say, Shantideva says, this anger of mine brings the hell on me. This person, even if he cut my limbs off, cannot do that to me. Very wise way of articulating which is more important problem to contain, which is other is a much lesser of a problem. Couldn't be bothered even containing that. not going against the stone, not going at the person who hurled the stone, like a dog will go after the stone. And the man usually goes after the person who hurled the stone. And police will also do that. And law will also do that. You see what I mean? But the practitioner must not go too much with either of them. Maybe after having gone after these fruitlessly, then one should see what really have to go after to contain then one's own hatred. You see, that's really the teachings, this is amazing. Sort of shines out. Wow. Then at least we know. We can definitely help the person who actually hurled the stone. We definitely will not hurl a stone ourselves. But one who thinks the person who hurled the stone is bad and hurls another stone to him or anyone, what did he do? He doubled the trouble. And most people don't see that's what they're doing. Tit for tat. If he do this, I can do this. Reaction is just no wisdom, no compassion, no well thought through, not question of who's right and they're wrong, therefore I can do something to punish them, even though it would be just the very thing we don't accept. We've gone blind in thinking that we've gone blind. In order to maintain control over all the country, through the eyes of agents, always conscientious and mindful, do what accords with the practices. Now, here Nagarjuna advises the king to maintain the overall law and order, I suppose, law and order in the overall the country, through the eyes of agents, meaning people who police or administrators or agents or district officials or local village or whatever. Always be conscientious and mindful. And don't listen to everything people reports to you. This is a lot of the few leaders like that. They just listen to one, they get influenced by this. Few advisors. The advisors just go, ooh. He's got no brain between the two ears. So quite a few people are like that. Then you can see. And also not listening to at all, but thinking that you got brain in between the two ears only. There's something very difficult. So therefore, one is really conscientious and do what is most appropriate and in concordance with the teachings of the Dharma. That's what I really said. Continuously honor in an exalted way those who are foundation of good qualities. So meaning people and individuals and groups of people who are good and consistently good, consistently lifting the weight of good according to the teachings. And he says, honor them with gifts and respect and service, and likewise honor all the rest. So according to the people's goodness, you should acknowledge them and give them gifts and sing praises for them and acknowledge what they've done and mention what they have contributed, not just to them but to others. And that will inspire the others to do. Others will be motivated, and others who have been doing that do not get fatigued. And therefore, it will inspire others to do. And also looks like there is a person who actually is overseeing these things, who recognizes these things, and then you, as a king, actually is respecting all. He says, honor all the rest. King is a king if he respects his subjects, particularly those bearers of the various important duties of the nation, and who identifies roles and responsibilities, who delegates them, who acknowledges them, who respects them, and then who praises them. This therefore gives an order of recognition, and the people also have something to look forward to work, because majority of people need encouragement. Otherwise, they get discouraged. That's the reason why we have to do that, is people get discouraged. And the birds of the populace will alight upon the royal tree, providing the shade of patience, flourishing flowers of respect, large fruits of resplendent giving. Here, Nagarjuna uses the analogy that the whole populace, subjects, the birds of the populace, will alight upon a royal tree, the tree that is really providing big branches and vast and leaves, and provide like a natural kind of, you call flora and fauna, natural abode for the birds to come and stay, because it has got such a place with a lot of beautiful flowers of practice, respect, and large fruits that they can pick on and eat and choose. So just like the large tree attracts so many birds, likewise, you as a monarch, you as the king, you as the leader needs to show respect to all, so that they all come and become attracted. Monarch whose nature is generosity are liked if they are strong, like a sweet hardened outside with cardamom and pepper. So he's likening to a food. He's a who is strong, and who cardamom and pepper are very strong, but it has got very strong flavor. So therefore, show some degree of generosity, even though you're very, very strong and steadfast. But your abundance as a king, your generosity to respect others, to acknowledge others, have your own humility. And then this will naturally attract. I suppose this is relevant to everyone in your own work or home, whatever. When we are kind and generous and respectful towards each other, then everybody is happy about you, because. And then it will be like a big tree that attract so many birds, and so so it's not just a king, but any unit of people. Everybody takes the role of themselves. How can I emulate being like a big tree that gives shade and abode and place to rest for everyone? If you analyze with reason thus, your governance will not degenerate. It will not be without principle, not become unreligious, but religious. So he's giving advice to the king that if you reason these ideas carefully, your royal policy, your governance means your reign will not collapse, but your reign will grow, because collapsing the reign of someone is very easy. There could be a lot of outside, inside obstacles, but overall goodness of the governance is not is kept with goodness. It, no matter what turbulence or what difficulty, it makes it even stronger. So you will not degenerate, but it will get stronger, and because you're adhering to the very dharmic way. So religious means dharmic, in this case dharmic way, harmless way, and mostly beneficial way, non-violent way. But if you try to use your power and treat others in those who have broken laws and those you don't like with a great vindictiveness and hatred, and punish them and lock them up too long, if you start doing these things, your reign will not last long. They too will want to rebel against you one day, because they too have their own mind. So therefore, your power, though is like a fairly karmically very dominating one, but it will wane quickly. It will lose and will degenerate very quickly. It's talking about the impermanence of power, Either its question is whether power is getting stronger in hard times, or power become completely squashed by weaknesses. So, or it become ineffective just only in form. Some powers are just in form. Like the kings, many countries now, the kings just like form. This is a figurehead. The real power is exercised by the democratically elected prime minister. In most countries like that, even some, they respect the king so much. If he did have a view, they may heed to it because of his goodness. Not that they have to, but because of the goodness. You did not bring your dominion with you from your former life, nor will you take it to the next. Since it was gained through religious practice, you would be wrong to act against the practices. So it's really saying that your current position to enjoy as a king is not something you inherited from the past life, job, or like that, but it is something to do with your practices that are according to Dharma, that you are enjoying this magnanimous situation as a king, and you cannot also ensure that you will be king after you die. You'll be completely powerless. You have to go somewhere and be someone completely unaware. So therefore, be careful, not misuse your power as in many ways is relevant to individuals. Whatever we are now, that we think we are very fortunate. This is due to our relevant practices. So this did not come direct from past. No, we will continue to be like we are now in the future. The karma will come and wane and wax, so to speak. So therefore, it would be wrong for yourself to go against the real practices of kindness, of non-violence, of non-vindictiveness, and non-ill will. So these are very important. O king, exert yourself to avert a sequence of miserable supplies for the realm through misuse of royal resources. So it's talking about telling the king how to avert misuse of his royal resources, because doing so will cause oneself to be born in extreme sufferings of hell. So extreme indulgence or extreme sort of poverty, all these things come as a result of not because you don't have things, but because of misuse of royal resources. Royal resources are not your resources. Your resources are maybe hundreds of years of sweat and tear of the subjects. Kings and ministers, they don't do very much. It's mainly collected from the masses. Or in those days, very big, heavy levies, heavy levies. Even these days, they're talking about heavy levies. Yeah, they talk about in Australia and Western country, taxpayers' money, they call it. Yeah, even the government is really using money from everybody. So therefore, it's a very, very dangerous money. If that is used, they're talking about helicopter, taking a helicopter for something or something. They're all talking about what is appropriate and inappropriate. This is all they're talking about about using the public money for private public meetings, particularly talking about using, some rogue nations' bribery and donations for one's own political parties. We know these contemporary issues. Nagarjuna knows it all the time. He knew it even then, O king, exert yourself to increase the succession of the dominion's resource through the proper use of royal resources. He says, don't deplete the resources that has been saved and earned and protected by your past kings, and do not let it go depleted, because these resources are necessary for the goodness of the land, and particularly when you talk about the government having to make the road and bridges and rest houses and hospitals and medicines and school education. If the money that should be going to those are not going, but shooting or locking people in an island, and then that was all done illegally. Then the government has to now pay 90 millions or something. It's amazing, yeah, a complete waste of money. Oh gosh. And so that kind of thing existed in the old days, Even these days, due to political persuasion, one party doing this, another, all due to policy conflict. It's not because the people aren't really thought through carefully. As a result of that, those people who are supposed to be helped, who were risking their life in a very dangerous dinghy boat in this torrent and in this torturous sea water, risking life because they have this or that problems and whatever, and wasting resources to exclude them at all costs, even that against international law or standard of humanity. And that's all this money is wasted. Resources completely wasted. In those days, of course, the king and his few people decide these days. These days, whoever is in power do that. Whoever is in power do that, and few of his people, and not really overall having kind of sane policy. Even some of the minor parties try to influence, but they say it's too limited, and so not so effective. And then we realize, after all, it's not quite as clearly as one who has power suggests, because they're all doing it for whatever their piece of paper says it, not really look at the people who they're doing it to. And so that's through the proper use of royal resources, and proper use means they are using. They think they are using it for the good. They think they're trying to help, but their facts and figures and their actual things in which they base their decision and assessment was wrong, and they thought it was right, and then they spent a huge amount just to prove them right, but which actually became prove they're wrong. See, we need Dharma. We need Dharma. all the public officers should have, all the people who make big decisions, they should study Dharma. Would be good. It's a royal policy. It's called. I think this kind of textbook should be written in the public policy thing. Slowly learning to be there, writing some little literatures. Some little paragraphs, little clause. Those people who write policies, So Nagarjuna has it all. So we'll stop here, not only tonight, but for this term. I think we're having a term break, as you know, but we have ample material to cover for at least next term. I think we can finish next term. Of course, Nagarjuna, you can never read enough. You need to read enough thinking that we have read him. Thank you, everyone.